Every empire believes it will last forever. Every superpower insists its dominance is permanent. And every single time, history proves them catastrophically wrong. From the Romans who thought their legions were invincible, to the British who claimed the sun would never set on their empire, to the Soviets who promised their system would bury capitalism. All of them followed the same predictable pattern of decline. All of them ignored the warning signs until it was too late. And right now, the United States is walking down that exact same path, deeper into the stages of collapse than most Americans realize. The collapse of empires isn't random, it isn't sudden, and it certainly isn't unpredictable. There's a pattern, a sequence of 7 distinct stages that every great power follows as it crumbles from within. Spain followed it in the 1600s. Britain followed it in the 1900s. The Soviet Union followed it in the 1980s. And today, America is at stage 5 of 7. The question isn't whether the pattern will complete itself. The question is whether you'll recognize where we are before the final stages hit. What makes this pattern so dangerous is that each stage feels normal while you're living through it. Citizens of declining empires don't wake up one morning and think their country is falling apart. They adapt. They rationalize. They convince themselves that this time is different, that their nation has somehow broken free from the laws of history. But the pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. It doesn't care about military might or economic statistics or national pride. It follows its own brutal logic, and it has never been wrong. So what are these 7 stages? How can you spot them? And why should every American be terrified that we're already deep into the sequence? Because understanding this pattern isn't just academic curiosity, it's survival. When empires collapse, they don't just fade quietly into the history books. They take their citizens' wealth, their security, and their future down with them. And if you can't see the warning signs, you can't protect yourself from what's coming. Stage 1 is expansion and confidence. This is when empires are born, when they discover their power and start flexing it across the world. Spain hit this stage in the 1500s when they conquered the Americas and flooded Europe with New World silver. Britain entered it in the 1700s as they built the world's most powerful navy and started claiming territories on every continent. The Soviet Union reached it after World War II when they emerged as a nuclear superpower, controlling half of Europe. And America? America hit stage 1 after World War II when they became the undisputed global hegemon with the world's reserve currency and military bases on every continent. During expansion, everything feels possible. The economy grows, the military wins, and citizens believe their system is superior to everyone else's. There's a sense of manifest destiny, that expansion isn't just beneficial, but inevitable. Resources flow in from conquered territories or economic dominance, and the population grows confident, sometimes arrogant about their place in the world. But here's what makes stage 1 dangerous. Success breeds overconfidence, and overconfidence leads directly to stage 2. Stage 2 is imperial overstretch. This is when empires bite off more than they can chew, when they commit to more territories, more wars, more obligations than they can realistically sustain. Spain hit this stage when they tried to fight wars across Europe while managing colonies from Mexico to the Philippines. Britain reached it when they attempted to control a quarter of the world's landmass with a population smaller than modern California. The Soviet Union entered overstretch when they tried to compete with American military spending while propping up communist regimes from Cuba to Vietnam to Afghanistan. Imperial overstretch isn't obvious at first. It starts with what seems like reasonable expansion. One more war, one more territory, one more commitment. But each expansion requires resources, administration, and military presence. The costs compound. The empire finds itself spread thin, trying to maintain control over vast distances with finite resources. Suddenly, what once seemed like strength becomes weakness. Every new commitment drains resources from existing ones. Every crisis in one region pulls attention and resources from others. The empire becomes reactive instead of proactive, constantly putting out fires instead of building for the future. America entered stage 2 sometime in the 1990s and 2000s. After the Cold War ended, instead of consolidating gains, America expanded NATO eastward, launched wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and committed to defending dozens of countries worldwide. Today, the United States has over 800 military bases in more than 70 countries. It spends more on defense than the next 10 countries combined. It's committed to defending Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, Israel, and most of Europe simultaneously. That's textbook overstretch. The resources required to maintain these commitments are staggering, and they grow heavier every year. But overstretch alone doesn't kill empires. Many powers have pulled back from overextension and recovered. The real damage comes in stage 3, fiscal crisis. This is when the costs of maintaining the empire begin to exceed the empire's ability to pay for them. Spain hit fiscal crisis in the late 1500s when the costs of their European wars exceeded even the massive silver flows from the Americas. They declared bankruptcy 4 times in 50 years. Britain reached fiscal crisis after World War I when the costs of maintaining their empire exceeded the wealth it generated. The Soviet Union entered fiscal crisis in the 1980s when military spending to compete with America consumed a quarter of their entire economy. Fiscal crisis doesn't mean the government runs out of money tomorrow. It means the fundamental math of empire stops working. The costs of maintaining territories, fighting wars, and projecting power grow faster than the economy that supports them. Governments respond by borrowing more, printing more money, or raising taxes. But these solutions create their own problems. Borrowing means future generations will pay for today's commitments. Printing money causes inflation, eroding the currency's value. Raising taxes slows economic growth, making the problem worse. America entered fiscal crisis in the 2000s and has been deep in it ever since. The national debt has exploded from $6 trillion in 2000 to over $33 trillion today. Interest payments on that debt now consume more than the entire defense budget. The government borrows money to pay interest on money it already borrowed. Meanwhile, military commitments continue to grow. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan alone cost over $2 trillion. Supporting Ukraine has cost over $100 billion. Maintaining bases worldwide costs hundreds of billions annually. The math simply doesn't work anymore. But even fiscal crisis can be managed if the underlying economy remains strong. The real accelerant of collapse comes in stage 4, economic decline. This is when the empire's economy begins to stagnate or shrink relative to its competitors. Spain's economy stagnated in the 1600s as inflation from American silver destroyed domestic industries. Britain's economy was overtaken by Germany and America in the early 1900s. The Soviet economy fell further and further behind the West from the 1960s onward, unable to compete in technology or consumer goods. Economic decline often starts subtly. Growth slows, innovation stagnates, manufacturing moves to cheaper locations, the currency weakens, young people struggle to find good jobs, infrastructure ages without replacement. What once felt like prosperity begins to feel like stagnation. Citizens start to question whether their children will be better off than they are. The empire's economic dominance, which once seemed unshakable, begins to crack. America has been in economic decline relative to its competitors since the 2000s. China's economy has grown from $1 trillion in 2000 to over $17 trillion today. Manufacturing has fled to Asia. Infrastructure is crumbling. Real wages for most Americans have stagnated for decades. The dollar's role as the world's reserve currency is being challenged. Countries are trading in their own currencies instead of dollars. The economic foundation that supported American global dominance is eroding, and the erosion is accelerating. Stage 4, economic decline sets the stage for the most dangerous phase of imperial collapse. Because when empires can't maintain their dominance through economic strength, they often turn to their last remaining advantage, military power. And that's where the pattern becomes truly destructive, where declining empires make the decisions that transform gradual decline into sudden catastrophe. This brings us to stage 5, social and political fragmentation. This is where America stands today, and it's where the collapse pattern becomes visible to ordinary citizens. During this stage, the empire's internal unity begins to fracture. Political divisions deepen. Social cohesion breaks down. Citizens lose faith in their institutions and turn against each other, instead of working together to solve problems. The shared values and common identity that held the empire together during its rise start to dissolve. Spain hit social fragmentation in the 1640s when Catalonia and Portugal rebelled against Madrid's rule. Regional identities became stronger than imperial identity. Citizens stopped seeing themselves as part of a greater Spanish project and started viewing the central government as an oppressive force. Britain experienced this after World War I, when labour strikes paralysed the country, Ireland fought for independence, and class warfare replaced national unity. The Soviet Union entered fragmentation in the 1980s, when ethnic republics began asserting independence. Communist ideology lost its grip on the population, and regional leaders stopped taking orders from Moscow. The signs of stage 5 are unmistakable once you know what to look for. Political discourse becomes poisonous. Elections turn into existential battles, where each side views the other as an enemy rather than opposition. Government institutions lose credibility. Citizens stop trusting elections, courts, media, and law enforcement. Regional differences become more important than national identity. People identify more strongly with their state, their race, their political tribe, or their economic class than with their country. Social movements arise that explicitly reject the existing system rather than trying to reform it. America's fragmentation accelerated dramatically in the 2010s and 2020s. Political polarization has reached levels not seen since the Civil War. Republicans and Democrats don't just disagree on policy, they view each other as threats to democracy itself. Trust in institutions has collapsed. Only 20% of Americans trust the federal government. Confidence in Congress, the Supreme Court, and major media outlets has plummeted. Regional divisions are deepening. Red states and blue states are passing laws that directly contradict each other's values. Some states are talking openly about nullifying federal laws they disagree with. The social fabric is tearing apart. Americans can't agree on basic facts about reality, let alone solutions to problems. Riots and protests have become routine responses to political disagreements. Citizens are self-sorting into ideological bubbles, where they only interact with people who share their views. Marriage across political lines has become rare. Even families are splitting apart over politics. The shared identity that once made Americans willing to sacrifice for each other is disappearing, replaced by tribal loyalties that pit citizen against citizen. But Stage 5, fragmentation, as dangerous as it is, doesn't guarantee collapse. Some empires have managed to pull back from the brink through reform, renewal, or external threats that reunite the population. The real point of no return comes with Stage 6, military overextension and defeat. This is when the empire's military power, stretched thin by overcommitment and weakened by internal division, suffers decisive defeats that shatter the illusion of invincibility. Spain reached Stage 6 in the 1640s, when their armies were defeated by French and Dutch forces, ending Spanish dominance in Europe. Britain hit it during World War II, when they could no longer defend their empire without American help, effectively ending their role as a global superpower. The Soviet Union entered Stage 6 in Afghanistan, when their military became bogged down in an unwinnable war that exposed the weakness of their entire system. Military defeat in Stage 6 isn't just about losing battles. It's about the psychological impact of those defeats on both enemies and citizens. When a superpower's military fails, it sends a signal to the world that the empire is vulnerable. Allies begin hedging their bets. Enemies become more aggressive. Client states start looking for new protectors. Most importantly, citizens lose faith in their government's ability to protect them and project strength. America hasn't reached Stage 6 yet, but the warning signs are multiplying. The withdrawals from Iraq and Afghanistan damaged America's reputation for military competence. The inability to deter Russia's invasion of Ukraine or prevent China's military buildup in the South China Sea suggests declining deterrent power. American military readiness has been degraded by decades of counterinsurgency operations and neglect of conventional warfare capabilities. Recruitment is falling as fewer young Americans want to serve. The military itself is becoming politicized, with officers taking sides in domestic political battles. More concerning is America's military commitments relative to its actual capabilities. The Pentagon admits it cannot simultaneously fight wars in Europe and Asia, yet America is committed to defending allies in both regions. If China moved against Taiwan, while Russia escalated in Ukraine, American forces would be stretched beyond their limits. A decisive military failure in either theater could trigger the psychological collapse that defines Stage 6. The final stage, Stage 7, is system collapse and replacement. This is when the old empire finally dies and something new takes its place. Spain's Habsburg system collapsed in the early 1700s, replaced by Bourbon rule that abandoned most imperial ambitions. Britain's empire dissolved after World War II, replaced by American hegemony and the Commonwealth system. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, fragmenting into independent republics that largely abandoned communist ideology. Stage 7 collapse can take different forms. Sometimes it's violent revolution that sweeps away the old order entirely. Sometimes it's peaceful dissolution where the empire breaks apart into smaller, more manageable pieces. Sometimes it's transformation where the same country continues to exist, but abandons its imperial ambitions and adopts a fundamentally different system of government or economics. What makes Stage 7 inevitable once the pattern advances this far is that the costs of maintaining the empire exceed any possible benefits. The mathematics of collapse become inescapable. Resources that should be invested in renewal are consumed by the desperate attempt to hold together a system that no longer works. Citizens who should be building the future are instead fighting over the scraps of a dying order. The empire becomes a parasite on its own people, extracting wealth and energy without providing security or prosperity in return. America hasn't reached stage 7 yet, but the trajectory is clear. Each stage of the pattern has followed predictably from the last. Expansion led to overstretch. Overstretch led to fiscal crisis. Fiscal crisis led to economic decline. Economic decline led to social fragmentation. And social fragmentation is creating the conditions for military overextension and eventual system collapse. The pattern has never been broken. Every empire that has entered this sequence has completed it. The only variables are timing and the specific form that collapse takes. Some empires decline gradually over generations, others collapse within decades, some fragment peacefully, others tear themselves apart in civil wars, but none have escaped the fundamental logic of imperial overextension and internal decay. The pattern is clear, the stages are predictable, and America is deep in the sequence with only 2 stages left before the inevitable end. Every empire that has walked this path before believed they were different, believed they were special, believed they could break free from the iron laws of history. Spain thought their silver would last forever. Britain thought their navy made them invincible. The Soviets thought their system was scientifically superior. All of them were wrong. The question isn't whether America will complete the pattern. The question is what comes next and whether you'll be prepared when it happens. Because when empires collapse, they don't just disappear quietly, they take everything down with them, your savings, your security, your future. The people who survive imperial collapse aren't the ones who trusted most in the system. They're the ones who recognize the pattern early and position themselves accordingly. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes with deadly precision. And right now, America is rhyming perfectly with every fallen empire that came before. The only difference is that this time, you know what's coming. If this opened your eyes to where we really stand, hit subscribe. History has all the answers if you know where to look.